right, at this time, I will call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Sunderland Selectboard and the Finance Committee. Do you guys have quorum today?
Yes,
Beautiful, wonderful.
we're all in person, look at us.
All in person and everything, amazing. All right, so we are both called to order at 6:32 p.m.
I'm having,
Is the owl being funky?
yeah.
Zoom meeting is not responding. Oh, there it goes.
Can you run the video? Somebody click on the little, yeah. Pardon us 1 second. Technical difficulties.
Sorry.
I'm just going to power cycle the owl. That usually works.
Okay,
You might have to give it a
So
minute.
the Apple is not.
Yeah, I just turned it off and back on again. You might need to give it another minute.
Apologize for this, guys. Sometimes it works perfectly. It did. Do we need to turn it back on again?
Yeah, I already
because the light's on. Right?
The
did.
lights went off. Oh. we
There
got
it comes, here it
That
comes.
sounds like a good sound. All right.
USB device not recognized. Malfunction.
Do we have audio or no audio or video? No audio or
Check
video.
my microphone.
Can you click on at the top where it says speakers? Click on the speaker, drop that down. It's not showing the owl at all, is it?
No.
No.
We have Morgan?
We have Morgan. We have FCAT, so I say we just go ahead with
Yeah.
what we got. And
Let's get a participant, that's all.
is that Crystal trying to
That
join
might,
us?
no, it
with
might
the
be, is
thing?
that you or that'd be somebody else, right?
Can you see who that is?
That'll probably be me.
Oh, okay. Okay,
It's just me.
all right,
Just
Are you
okay.
on too?
Yeah, I'm just logging on, so when I do the PowerPoint, you'll be able to see it on the big screen.
Gotcha. Okay. That shouldn't be affected by our camera not working though, so that should be fine. Okay, beautiful. Well, we're just gonna get started. Sorry about that, everybody. Really apologize. All right, our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the Select Board and Finance Committee meeting from 1/27/2025. I would entertain a motion.
make a motion, we approve the minutes from January 27th, 2025.
All right, I will second that. We have a motion made and seconded to approve the minutes from our last meeting on 1/27/2025. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-0. Thank you very much. Alrighty, so our first order of new business today is going to be to review the budget request from Frontier. So thank you for joining us, Darius. Would you like to start with elementary or Frontier?
Excuse me,
Sorry, yes.
elementary was not on the agenda, so I don't believe we can discuss this elementary school.
So it's with Frontier Region, which is, my understanding is it's both of them. Am I incorrect there?
Yes.
Did not say Union 38, and now the new business is to discuss scheduling schools, plural. So I assume that's Franklin County Tech and Sunderland.
Well, Franklin County Tech also is available tonight, and.
But it was not in the agenda.
Correct.
And my concern is we're in violation of open meeting law.
And, yeah, it was not anticipated to have the elementary school. We had been working with Darius on the Frontier budget, but then they were able to do it.
And my concern is I do not want to be involved in any violation of open meeting laws. And my interpretation was only Frontier was going to be discussed today.
I think you are correct. I'm sorry to say that I had hoped we could do it under the unanticipated because we had short notice. And that's your decision to make, the select boards, on whether you're willing to take an open meeting law potential risk and do it under the unanticipated, which you have the right to do.
Do you have an opinion on that, Dan?
I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure about the unanticipated. I mean, would it really hurt schedule if we waited?
No, it's just we'd have to ask
Well, we have
them,
everybody.
sorry, that we'd have to ask them to come back, and I don't think Darius would be able to come back.
Well, it's their job to request to be on the agenda. It's not your job to request that it's on. It is their responsibility to request to be on the agenda.
Well, it's a combination, and it depends. Last year, we never had, I understand, a Frontier present to the board. It doesn't always happen. And sometimes we have to go to the hearings to get information. This is a much more advantageous setting to get all your questions answered. And if we are unable to talk about the elementary school tonight, we'll have to go to the hearing next week and then follow up with more questions for Darius after that.
I think it's not my decision to make. I think it'd be unfortunate to not let them present. If that means we don't ask questions in this meeting and we aren't going to be taking any action, it's up to the select board, but I would hope, as you said, we don't always get a live presentation. I think it'd be great if they spent the time and they're here, if we could find a way to have one.
So my feeling on it is sort of in the same vein there, which is that if we don't let them present, we're the ones who suffer. Our ability to make decisions that's the bottom line, is that we don't end up having the information we need. If this was a month ago and we could tell them, come back in 2 weeks, that would probably be a different case.
So we shouldn't be manipulated by their actions. I can't be a part of this. If you are going to allow discussions tonight, I will be resigning from the Finance Committee and I will be leaving.
That is entirely your prerogative, yes.
Thank you.
Have a good day. All right. Let's move ahead with the elementary school then.
Okay, so I was trying to get into Zoom, but it's just sort of sitting here. I'm not sure if you have to let me in.
I'm not sure, I don't
So I was
believe you
gonna
can.
share.
I think the Zoom we use through the OWL, that's not functioning.
Anything funky.
You want to take
This
that?
is the wrong one. I need this one.
I
Right,
think you all have printout copies anyway. I was just
do.
gonna share
Yes.
for the sake of the public, so I can go through it without sharing on this.
but that's the other reason to move ahead is that the public would be able to view so if you can do it on screen, that would be great.
See if we can get it going.
Yeah. I don't know that we can get that going.
I just clicked on the link from the website. I'm not sure if that's the correct.
So
link or
you
not,
should
but-
show, when you do that, you should come in as a participant, and that's not working, and I think that's,
No, mine didn't,
You
no
don't-
one from that end accepted, so there might be a waiting link on there.
It's supposed to have like a waiting room thing right here, under here.
That if you had a waiting thing, it's probably something that needed to be clicked.
Yeah.
Check the
I'll
host
get out
tools,
and
host
try to
tools.
go back in.
See somebody there. Shoot.
No, this is all. I'm gonna end the thing and come back in because,
maybe it'll work.
and
Maybe if you join instead
let's
of
actually,
start.
we have an agenda on here from some other previous, here we go. Because this should have the link right in the bottom of it.
We're using the link in the calendar on the website.
The Feb 24 link.
So if you enable, you want to look at that before you go ahead, enable people to join or enable participants?
He's trying to connect to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it should already be set up to make them, to force them to go into
Yeah,
the waiting room.
room's all in, yeah.
We do that because otherwise people can Zoom bomb us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm really sorry about our technology issues. We have the information in front of us. I think we're gonna have to move forward without the aid of our technology.
Do you have information you need me to print?
Well, I'll wait, I'm not, they go first, so.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so you have the full narrative and, let me introduce myself first, because I don't think I know everybody on the committee. We may have met briefly, but I'm Shelley Parita. I've been the Director of Business Administration with Frontier and Union 38 since 2019. So Darius and I will tag team here to present for Sunderland and Frontier to you. So the full narrative, I'm not going to read through this whole thing. You all are capable of reading. I'm sort of going to highlight some components and then really jump into the budget conversation where it impacts the town finances. But there is a timeline included in here for you. So you can see in January, we presented the preliminary budget. The conversations at the school level and at the administrative level in the central office actually go back to October. We start this process early in the fall to make sure that we're getting a jump start, starting to look at what all of those numbers are going to pan out to be. At the last school committee meeting, a budget was decided to move forward to public hearing, which is the number that you're seeing this evening. We will have our public hearing on March 11th. And then the school committee will deliberate and then hopefully vote on March 22nd to move forward to town meeting, which, do I have that date right, April 25th? Is that your town meeting date?
Yes.
That's the last right?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing I want to highlight in the budget development process is that we start with level services when we build the budget, taking a student-centered, needs-based approach and looking at all of the numbers. And we have the goal of being as fiscally responsible as we can, taking into consideration the impact at the elementary level as well as what the assessment is going to be Frontier. So a lot of those conversations we're having with both school committees, you know, we might say to the Frontier School Committee, Sunderland budget is looking really high for the elementary school. Is there anything we can do on Frontier and vice versa? If Frontier is looking really high, we will work because we know that the school budgets make up at least 60% of the town's overall budget. So we're really focusing on being fiscally responsible, taking all the pieces into account and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the student population. I did give you the expense categories. I think it's good information just for you all to have so you can know what the classifications are. That's on page 5 and page 6 of the report. Those are set by DESI and they're the primary function codes that we expense out in the full budget. Enrollment, just to give you a quick comment there, you can see that we've had a significant decrease in enrollment since 2020. The first big drop-off was right after COVID. We did see a reduction in resident enrollment as well as school choice enrollment. Currently, in this year, we're at 175 students. About 80% of that comes from resident students and the other 20% from school choice. There is a negative impact to the town directly when our enrollment is stagnant or in decline. Because part of the Chapter 70 formula takes into account your enrollment. And if you are in stagnant or declining enrollment, they consider you to be in full harmless for Chapter 70 formula, even though they've implemented some changes in the Student Opportunity Act and how they calculate it. If your enrollment is dropping or remains the same year to year, you're only going to receive a minimum per pupil increase. So next year, the governor's preliminary budget has a $75 per pupil minimum increase, and it is less than $11,000 in revenue growth for the town of Sunderland. That's a significant gap when you look at what our total budget presented is today. Historically, Sunderland Elementary School's budget has been, budget increases have been more sporadic and have had more change than some of the other elementary schools in the district. In 2020, there was an override. The budget increase that year was almost 14%, and the primary driver of the override was the school budget. Since then, we've fluctuated between 2.75 and 6.63, the average increase being 5.27 over those 6 budget cycles. Last year we came in, or the current year, fiscal year 25, the budget was 5.05% increase over FY24, but I did just want to make a note that 1% of that was because of our transportation contract adjustment. We had to put that out for negotiation last year. We saw a significant market adjustment. Otherwise, our level service and new requests would have been around 4%. Any questions so far? I know I'm talking a little bit fast. I know you have a big agenda, so just stop me if something comes up. So level services, what does that mean specifically for Sunderland Elementary for FY26? So we are looking at a 4.33% increase over fiscal year 25, just over $150,000. The primary driver is salary and wage growth, which totals almost 3% of that 4.13. That includes placeholders for teachers and instructional assistants because we are in negotiations for both contracts. It includes a placeholder for school-based staff and central office employees. If you're wondering what page I'm on, it is page 7. I'm at 7.1 of the report. Other notable increases include a $22,000 increase to our out-of-district placement costs. So that is a resident student whose needs are beyond those that can be met at the elementary school. So they are in a, whether it's a private or a collaborative placement, I don't have that specific in front of me, but they're at another school so that their needs can be met. We are seeing a growth in that tuition cost to send that student out of district next year. And then there was also a $22,000 adjustment to our revolving funds. So part of the budget process is looking at our revolving funds and our grants to make sure that the expenses we paid from the prior year can continue to be placed on those funds. Revolving funds for the elementary school include early childhood, special education, school choice, and school lunch. And we did make an adjustment based on what we anticipate for revenue coming in and expenses coming out. So for example, if the early childhood account expenses are exceeding revenue, there becomes a point where our surplus and our fund balance gets diminished so much that even though we can't reduce the staff, we have to find another fund resource for it. So $22,000 in wages was placed onto the general fund to account for the deficit in the revolving fund account. The other thing that I want to mention is we have used almost $65,000 in rural aid to offset the general fund. The first presentation to the school committee was $65,000 higher than the 4.33% increase. At that point, rural aid numbers had just come out, but when we built the first draft, we didn't necessarily know what that concrete number was going to be for rural aid. The intention of rural aid is to help schools that are not receiving a significant amount in Student Opportunity Act adjustment for Chapter 70 offset the budget. So that is exactly what we're going to use it here for. Otherwise, we would be looking at an additional $65,000. Rural aid is subject to state appropriation. It's also subject to 9C cuts, and if the town's revenue is not as high as anticipated, it is something that could fluctuate. So it's not best practice to use a grant that you can't rely on year to year or a funding source that you can't rely on year to year. But we do have the funds available, and it is most fiscally responsible to apply that 2% to help reduce the budget.
And
Yep.
and we're applying this year's rural aid funds. So we're not using year of, so it would be kind of year in the rear spending. So it's, what we're going to save from this year, we'll apply it to next year. So we would have, if there was 9C cuts, it would be mid-year cuts. Kind of thing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
The other thing I want to mention in level services is that Sunderland faces a sick buyback obligation, so that is a contractual obligation in the teacher contract. Upon retirement, there is an obligation to pay sick buyback at retirement based on years of service and longevity. We have 2 staff that have to be paid out in fiscal year 26. This has been something that's been up for discussion with school committee and select board for at least, I believe, 4, if not 5 of the last budget cycles. Typically, Sunderland has been fortunate enough to not have to include this in the budget, and the select board has approved using other funds such as, ARPA, or a separate warrant article, I think has happened in the past. So that is a $60,000 expense that would be added into the budget. Our school committee would like to request that it is funded separately from the budget so as not to inflate it. We do not know of any retirees for fiscal year 27. To put it in as a permanent expense would mean that some years we need it and some years we don't. And if we didn't need it, then we would be overinflated and be asking for more money from our taxpayers than we need to. So that's the background of why we request it separately. We also recognize that it's still an expense of the town. It's not taking it away. We're still asking the town to fund it. We're just not including it in the general fund budget. Otherwise, we would be at, between the rural aid and the sick buyback, another 4% budget increase. So our level services, which is where we did start in January, would be about 8.5%. That all makes sense. I missed anything? Darius? Okay. All right, so getting into new requests now, so we were just talking about level services. We are looking to add one new instructional assistant to staff. That is based on student needs as outlined in IEP requirements. We are mandated and obligated to meet student needs based on their IEP, and we will have a student who needs new support next year. We looked closely with the principal at the existing students to see if there was anyone maybe aging out in 6th grade or anyone whose services would be dropping off next year to see if we could swap. Unfortunately, that's not an option at this time. So we are requesting funding of $30,000 to add an instructional assistant. And then again, trying to look at holistically what the impact is to the town with our budgets. We just wanted to acknowledge that it could also mean increased cost and benefits for you all. We know every employee that's over half-time is eligible for benefits, which could increase your labor burden. And then non-salary increases are very minimal. We are requesting $8,000 to fund, increase the building maintenance repair line and increase the general supply line. The building maintenance repair request is $5,000, general supplies is $3,000. The $5,000 is really just for us to continue to be able to handle deferred maintenance. The building is aging, things that are not a capital request that we can handle internally. We want to do that if we can. We have been fortunate to increase our overall budget for that slightly over the years, and this would bring it up to, I believe, $40,000. And then the general supply increase is just due to inflation. Everything is costing more, from paper to classroom supplies to markers, copies, all those things. So the total new funding request is $38,000, which adds 1.10% to the overall increase, bringing our total general fund request to 5.43 or $188,093 over fiscal year 25. Operating expenses outlined in the budget include school-based costs, so anything that's direct teaching and learning at the school, as well as any school-based administrative staff and central office expenses. I gave you some pie charts in there, which is really just to highlight that the majority of our budget does go directly to instruction and teaching and learning. You'll see that almost 80% of the budget is for expenses related to educating the students of resident and surrounding towns. Salaries and wages, same concept, about 80% is paid directly to instructional staff. And other expenses you can see on page 9 are more evenly spread out, with the highest being, and this is non-salary based, with the highest being instruction, so that's supplies and materials, things like of that nature for the classroom, as well as operations and maintenance. And then student services includes the bus contract, so that's why that one's a little bit more significant.
Nathaniel has a
Quick question for you, Shelley. On the top graph, you have benefits at 43,000. I'm assuming that doesn't include health insurance benefit. That's like
It's central office.
central office benefit. Okay, that's why I thought. I was like, wow, man, we're getting off real cheap there.
Thank you. That's a really good point. The only other expense in the budget for benefits would be if there was a sick buyback included, which it's not, or it would be 60,000 higher. That falls into that category. And then there is some insurance that Ben gets as a benefit in his administrative contract that's included there, but that 43 is primarily central office cost share, just Sunderland's portion of the cost share.
Gotcha.
And also, each of those categories are set by DESI. Those are earlier in the document she explained, so it's not like we can move stuff around to manipulate graphs. It comes directly from what DESI says we have to categorize each category as.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that myself and everyone else is keeping in mind that this pie, there's another smaller pie next to it that is our health insurance also. So, yeah.
Quick, Shelley, and student services, and I should know this, a lot of the programs we buy are for all 4 elementary schools, right? Like SORA or, the licenses. How do we divide those up? Do we buy them individually by every elementary?
So all of those would be classified as instructional or curriculum expenditures, and it depends if it's a 5-way or 4-way split. So if only the elementary schools are using it, the cost share is based on the current year enrollment and split out the 4 ways. If it is something that Frontier also uses, like our school or Parent Square, that's a different percentage based on the 5-way current enrollment cost share.
So it's enrollment percent.
Yep,
Okay. And change it every year, a
yes.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah, slightly.
Yeah.
Is the total number of employees the same this year as last year, with just the instructional assistant being
We would
added?
just be adding the one, yes.
Okay.
Because there's two retirements and then 2 new, is that also happening?
Say that again?
2 retirements and then 2 new?
We have to replace the
Right,
retirees.
right. So it's the same +1.
So that's sort of one of the questions, is the potential savings going from a end of career teacher to a new teacher accounted for in here?
Absolutely.
Okay, great,
Whenever we can, we take advantage of those savings.
beautiful.
The hard part is if you have, say it is a $20,000 swing, because it really could be if you have somebody at the most educated column at the highest step and we're hiring, middle of the road, it could be a $20,000 savings, but we just added back in expenses from other things like the revolving fund adjustment, for example, so you don't really see the savings when it comes out in the line.
Okay.
But we absolutely take account of that.
Aren't we dropping down 1 classroom next year? We're graduating 2 6th grade classes and we're only going to have 1 kindergarten.
Yeah, we had a kindergarten this year.
Okay, so you're saying compared to, got it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was going to be one of my questions, is how many sections per grade are we looking at for this cycle?
I think there are 3 grades that have 1 classroom and the rest all have 2. That was good number.
It's 2. First grade should be 2.
First grade will be 2,
Second grade will be,
second grade will be 2, third grade will be 1.
fifth grade will be 1.
Will it be fifth grade next year?
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
So 2.
The kindergarten's only like that.
Oh, yeah, kindergarten 1, 5, and 2, right? For the same.
The others is shift.
Yeah. So we have 14 grade level teachers currently, including pre-K, and that'll be the same count for next year, same grade level teachers. So not every grade has 2 sections, but most of them do.
How do you think about, obviously you can't control it, a lot of that's to do with native population, but right in that middle ground between 1 and 2 sections, do you think that's going to settle in on 2 or 1, or is it going to go back and forth for the foreseeable future?
We would like that crystal ball.
Well, you can predict that the next 3 or 4 years a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So in the younger grades, obviously, we don't want to see, grades, numbers getting above 24,
Right.
that kind of thing. So and that's what happened with the kindergarten class this year, we got above 25, we ended up having to split that. So, it'll be that way moving forward. If we were to lose, some students in any grade level and it fell lower, where we could combine classes, that's what we look at from year to year. And we've done that in the past, with combined sections.
Does this feel like that 1-2, 1-2 thing is about the same as it's been for the last few years? We're right at that cusp.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
kind of
it's
starting to
in those
steady states,
numbers,
like we're right on the edge.
right, and those class numbers are, we have 21 in one class, which has 1 section, right? So that's right on that, you get a couple kids moving, also that becomes very, and also when you look at numbers of classes, it's not just the number itself, but it's the needs in that class. So if you have, 24 with a couple high-need students, that can feel like 30. And vice versa. You could have like 25 kids in class and it's running smoothly because it's the needs aren't as high.
Well, in higher grades, it's a little easier, lower grades, it's harder.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier for a school district that is trying to decide between 6 and 7 fifth grades to manage that than it is for one that's trying to decide between 1 and 2, because that's a world of a difference. So, yeah.
We're almost always, every year, talking about the kindergarten class, though it seems we can't predict that, but a conversation comes up every year. What do we do at this point? It's March and we know a little bit, but not quite enough yet. But with town meeting in April, we have to make some decisions. So that's definitely part of the conversation. The other thing that is challenging is,
And now on the document. Sorry.
We have the conversation about school choice as well, because you want to make sure that you're not having too much school choice, that you're having to add staff just for the sake of bringing in school choice students. But if you get to a point where you reduce this class size so much to 1 that you can't take any school choice, then you're losing revenue that's helping pay for some of your instructional assistants. So you're really having to look at the composition of your staff, and we do have those conversations.
Well, there's also we try to help school choice siblings, and that can be complicated too. You want to if you already have a kid there, and you come from there, it's nice to have another kid coming from the same family. So. And the kindergarten dictates really the next 6 years. Because we don't have 6 people moving to Sunderland at grade level.
Question on the IA position, not about that position in particular, but just thinking about some of these trends. What is the trajectory looking like on one-on-one needs? Like, is this IA pool, let's assume a steady state of students in classes, or is that going to continue to grow? How do we think about?
We're seeing a greater need of special education supports
Right.
in the elementary schools at the younger level. And, COVID, you throw that in there, and the dysregulation that came out of there. The idea is that early intervention with the one-to-ones and whatnot will get us so that students will develop the skills they no longer need the one-to-one. But that's not always the case, and sometimes we're using a one-to-one to hold that student in district by being able to provide the services that we can do without the outplacement. As soon as you get a one-to-one, you're around $30,000. You go out service, you're starting at 50 and going to 150 to higher. You're talking about transportation costs of $300 a day when you outplace a student. So sometimes when you're doing that one-to-one, it's the natural step of trying to keep the student in district with their community, and doing that kind of thing. So it all depends on the needs, and some of them early intervention can work on skills to get up, and there's others that you may have a one-to-one within their entire experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's not surprising at all, and I think there's a lot of good things that come from that investment. How do we all collectively think about the impact that has on your strategic planning within your budget, and then our planning within our budget? Like, how is there a not from you, but like from the state, is there a plan of like, hey, we see this trend, we understand this, it's going to be destabilizing on budgets, and how do we try to address it?
The state does things called circuit breaker, which gives you funding after a certain threshold that you're spending on a child. So if you suddenly put a child out, it costs $100,000, we're going to get a certain percentage above $48,000. We get a certain percentage back. Again, that shifts as the year goes on the demands from schools. So there is some bailout money, but still, special education is very expensive, and it's running a good portion of our budgets.
And our trend is to do more and more of that in district or in school than it is.
It's cheaper to do it in schools, and across the district and also at Frontier, we create a lot of special education programs that are also revenue generating. Because we take in students. If you only have one student, you can't really build a program. You have a couple, you build a program, you save money. The other thing is that the trends in education is we're identifying earlier and getting interventions earlier, and so that's a good thing. And that means that with those early interventions, the costs will go down as a child gets older, in many cases, not in all cases. And so that's the hope there. But there's no plan there's no bailout coming from the state to look at special education costs and how they're going to help local communities. It's all part of this, very elaborate formula.
And not to soapbox, but the amount of money that the towns get for education versus 20, 30, 40 years ago, we were getting something like 70 or 80% of our money from the state and federal level, and now we're like 20%, something like that. And so it's not just an increase in needs, it's also that every level other than local level has been pulling money out of the school systems for my entire life. And that's where we are. And that's, but also, and not to not to disparage the school systems of the past, but I think a lot of students are getting services that would have just gotten missed before and managed to make it all the way through school without success because they were not getting those services. So the increase in services isn't just needs driven, it's also identifying those needs and getting them the services. So yeah, there's a lot of factors.
So good job on spending more money is what I think he was trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, the other good news we got from Natalie Blay last week is they are going to reopen the formula, the age-old Chapter 70 formula. And they're worked up the courage to crack that nut, and it might make a world of difference if there's money to back it up.
I mean, they could just do it easily and just double it,
Well,
and then
that's-
they just be done, and no discussions, no talks, just, And
I
also,
think that they are making attempts. The Student Opportunity Act and the change in the formula as it exists right now was supposed to help increase special education costs, make some changes, but the problem is there's so many districts like ours where enrollment is stagnant or declining, and you're only seeing the minimum per pupil. So the schools that were already receiving the most Chapter 70 funding money are now getting more versus, the smaller rural towns like us, so.
another point I just want to make is that, from my perspective, it's not just about the money in terms of having the IA, it's also about the experience for those students, being able to be in their school with their neighbors' kids and being able to be with their community and not feel like they're being shipped away. And also that student's experience with traveling to whatever district we send them to is more of that student's time out of school, out of home. And so it's not just money, it's also about trying to keep our community whole as much as possible as well. So.
It's hard to predict too when you don't know who you're gonna have for move-ins, mid-year or over the summer, and then also, anyone who's receiving, reach services, under 3, that once they hit 3 and become eligible for preschool, then they become a part of your program and you're obligated to provide those services to them, so.
And we're also
A lot of that happens like January, February, March, as kids start to hit 3 years old, we see changes in.
And we also have a town that's very heavily apartment complex driven, and so there's a lot of people who move in and out end of the summer, beginning of September, and so every year there's a swing where we don't know what's going to happen with. We could have 5 families decide to move into Cliffside, in August, and we don't know that, or we could have a whole bunch of students who move out of district in the middle of the summer because the apartment complexes raises their rates by $100 a month or something like that. That uncertainty that does not necessarily exist in a normal housing market in a town like ours that is so heavily apartment complex driven is really hard for them to account for.
So, obviously, we haven't had our public hearing yet, and so we're looking for feedback on that, and so you can, send us a note, you can send the school committee members a note, if you have concerns or even additional questions, and then we have a public hearing, and then we vote the budget later on, so there's still a lot of time in this budget process to solicit feedback as you guys are working through the other budgets in the town about, what you need to do and that kind of thing, so. Open the hearing.
When's your public hearing? What's the date?
The 11th?
It's
11th.
March 27th.
Okay.
Not what I said earlier.
3/27, okay.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. We'll shift over to the Frontier one so we can try to keep everything moving along.
All right, so that's that.
So even bigger.
All right, so
Okay.
I'm just getting these budgets.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, the district phone here?
Yeah.
Here you go. Sorry about it.
No, I was just wondering if it might be okay to take Franklin Tech first? Will that be just as long?
It's gonna be just as long, yeah. All right.
All right, so Frontier, a lot of the same information at the top, so I'm not going to go through that again about the budget process. March 6th is March 4th is our public hearing coming up, and then on the 6th, we will vote to adopt the budget, hopefully. I did give you some historical information. Frontier's average budget growth over 5 years has been 2.65% annually. So again, Frontier aims to keep as low as possible. In the current year, I do want to talk about some of the most significant expenses that are included in the budget. We are presenting a budget increase of 2.32% over fiscal year '25. It's just over $300,000. One of the most significant drivers is the increase to our health insurance. And I am on part 4 on page 5. The health insurance, we're part of Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust. We're seeing an increase of 18 to 20% depending on the plan that employees are on, so that is a significant driving factor. The other increase is primarily for wages, instructional assistants, teachers, and school-based staff as well as central office. And then you can see some other minor adjustments there as well.
Quick question on that. And correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the Frontier's insurance is through the Deerfield, is negotiated by Deerfield and is their employees in the Deerfield plan. Is that correct? Or they're a separate group? Okay. The question on that is, we're having a similar increase of 19.9% or 19.8%.
92.
A really, really high increase. We are looking at ways of coming up with some adjustments to our health plan that we can present to our collective bargaining units to try to find middle ground there where we can save some money and come into maybe a 10% increase or something like that. Is there any plan on your guys' end to do that, or are you pretty set with it?
What kind of things are you talking about, like incentives not to take the insurance?
That's one of the things we're talking about. We're also talking about possibly adding a hospital deductible or something like that.
It's adding a $250, $750 deductible. There's no deductibles on the plan now. I think for Hampshire County already has that.
Hampshire County does not have any deductible plans, so.
It doesn't have the $250, $750?
Not the plans that we're part of. So as
Okay.
as part of the trust, that's part of the trust too, right? So we only offer an HMO and a PPO. There's no deductible at all on
Okay.
those two plans. We already have at Frontier in the teacher contract that there's a buyout. If you don't take our insurance, you get a stipend instead. So that does already exist, and if we were to change that, everything has to be collectively bargained, as you said. And with the trust, I know that the trust is looking at offering a high deductible plan. They're also looking at increasing co-pays for some of the GLP-1 drugs, because that's one of the biggest drivers right now in the health insurance costs is the weight loss drugs. But those are things that will have to be bargained by every single unit that's a member of the trust. It's not just, Frontier can't just go and change the benefits without being part of that system. And what will happen is essentially if our bargaining units didn't want to go with the changes that the trust puts in place, you're basically kicked out and you have to go find insurance elsewhere.
Okay.
So I don't foresee any way to bring this cost down in the near future.
Okay, that's a fair answer. I just had to ask,
Yeah.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
No, and I wonder how that would impact teachers. It is stated in the contract what the town's contribution is, right? So they would have to bargain with the teachers.
Well, and just for context, one of the things that we're thinking is that the 20% increase doesn't just hit the town. It also means that the staff members have to also take their, whatever percentage they're paying goes up by 20% also. So it's not just the town trying to save money, it's us trying to find a product that works both for us and for our members. Because, no one wants to have a 20% increase in that line item. So just, food for thought. If it's not possible, no problem. Just, any way we can try to save money for the town and also for the teachers and for IAs and support staff and whatnot,
I mean, this is totally off topic, but I personally have a little bit of concern about us going to high deductible plans, given the amount of young staff that we have, that are paras especially, that maybe would get on a high deductible plan and don't realize what that means. And, they've got to make a personal decision, but I just think we have to find the right balance in all of it. And I think everyone in this area is doing exactly what you guys are hoping to do and having those conversations of how to bring costs down, because it's going to hit personal pockets and budgets significantly.
There's an extra zero on the end of that 20% that, a little higher than we can handle. Sorry to derail the conversation,
that's
but that
okay.
was.
It's a good question. Okay, so let's get through here. I gave you the the classifications of expenses, if you have specific questions, for sake of time, I'm not gonna go through all of those. But what I did wanna say is that about 50% of the budget is dedicated to instruction, teaching, and learning, whether that's salaries and wages or other expenses. Benefits is the next highest driver for Frontier, because Frontier has its benefit plan separate from the town for employees. And then central office falls under health insurance as well. So give you some charts there on page 7, 8, 9. 9 talks about revenues, which I do want to get into a little bit more. But basically, the bottom line with expenditures, much like the elementary school, is that the majority of the budget goes to salaries and wages, and the majority of those expenses are also for providing teaching and learning services directly to students.
So just a quick question on the, I'm looking at the elementary and the Frontier one here. And in elementary, looks like the percentages for education and instruction are much higher. Is that because you're having benefits are actually included in this one versus not this one?
Benefits are, the 3 million that's listed as benefits, those are true
Okay.
benefit costs for Frontier.
So apples and oranges, we really can't compare them at all.
You cannot.
That's kind of what my assumption was, but I wanted to just
Yeah.
pump it, okay.
I know the assessment is really where everyone wants to get at, but are there specific general fund questions, line item questions, specific expense account questions before I start talking about the assessment?
I'd ask a general question. It's just to introduce myself. I'm Dylan Corpita. I just joined the finance committee. I remember
We
you
do
from
know
when I
each
was up
other.
and then
Okay.
Darius, I think we've exchanged emails and that through that, but anyway. General question, if I look at this Frontier General Fund budget, increase of 2.32%. If I strip out the insurance for a moment, it's about 1% increase, right? I'm doing that because at the elementary school level, we have stripped out the insurance, right? And at the elementary school level, I think you said it was about 8.5%. And then there's a couple of deductions from that for the sick pay and then the rural aid. So the sick pay is kind of different. I think putting that aside makes sense. So you basically have 1% baseline non-insurance increase at Frontier. I'd say about 6.5 baseline at the elementary school. Like that's a big difference,
Yeah.
obviously. How do we think about what's driving the differences if steps in wages should be comparable and inflation of pencils and paper should be comparable?
So a couple of things happen. One is that Frontier has the ability to fund more of their expenditures with other funding sources. And I talked about rural aid with Sunderland. Frontier also receives rural aid, and that amount is just over $100,000. So we've applied that to the budget already. There may be other personnel changes that we take into account as well that helps offset some of the COLA increase. And they could also just have capacity to throw an expense on school choice or an expense on our special education revolving accounts. We have really strong special education programs at Frontier where we bring in a significant number of students from surrounding school districts. So we're able to help offset the budget there.
I would also say that there's probably an element having to do with our previous conversation about being on that cusp of 1 or 2 classes. Frontier, because it's 4 towns instead of 1, has that advantage of it's 6 or 7 sections of History 101 or whatever it is. I'm making numbers up, but like it's a bigger pool of students, so individual fluctuations are less relevant.
We also tend to not have some of the other adjustments that the elementary school has, which there isn't a significant amount this year, but, you know, typically, our electricity line, for example, maybe it's 50,000 and we spend between 40 and 45. So I know, based on prior year history, I have a little bit of wiggle room in certain expense accounts. Frontier functions like a municipality, so any excess budget goes into overall aid. So we have to make sure that we have savings to cover, major things that may happen in the building or out-of-district placements that we didn't plan for. So the elementary schools, the budget at the end of the year, the amount that's still left tends to be very little. And, we may paint the gymnasium if we have enough money left. Whereas Frontier, it really is our free cash, just like the town has free cash and has some buffer in their budgets as well. So there were a lot of things discussed. Keith, jump in and remind me if I'm remembering this wrong, but Keith sits on the budget subcommittee for Frontier. We discussed that certain expense accounts are out of balance and that we do need to increase for supplies and materials. Or what were some of the other things that we were talking about? I don't have it in front of me. Minor things, though, that might add up to $30,000. And the committee said, well, you know, last year we had 8,000 left in electricity or 5,000 left in heat. Let's find a way to continue to cover that rather than increasing the budget. We also had the conversation about using an additional $100,000 of school choice money. So that's taken accounted for here. Otherwise, that would be, you know, another 1% roughly added back in. So we do the best that we can at the subcommittee and then the full committee level to make the Frontier budget as conservative as possible.
Thank you.
Does that answer your
That
question?
helps.
Okay.
There's a lot here, so.
Yeah, it's a lot, for sure.
It also looks like there's a few categories where the budget went way down. You know, a transportation, you know,
Yeah,
that's
so
some
that's
$100,000.
where you'll see we're using rural aid to help offset. So it's not a decrease
Okay.
in transportation costs, or I'm sorry, we're using school choice on that one. We basically
Okay.
just said, let's bring our budget down as low as we possibly can. We know we're gonna have X revenue in school choice. We're gonna take another $100,000 of our school choice funds to help offset the budget, which could be, in the long run, years from now, problematic. If your school choice numbers decrease, your revenue is decreasing, and you're gonna have to throw things back on your general fund if you can't make cuts. Right now, based on what we know and what we have known for several years with our school choice numbers and what we're predicting, we're not gonna see that decrease in the very near future. So while it's presenting in this sheet that the expense went down, we're just supplementing it with another funding source.
And the big difference with the elementary schools is if the school choice numbers go down, our local population is not going to explode at the same number. We'll see it coming because it's coming up in the elementary schools. There's no surprises in numbers coming up. I mean, you get in the full picture of things. So whereas the elementary schools, we don't know if they're one or two sections. The Frontier, you have a little bit more. I know what the fifth grade looks like coming out from all four towns.
Makes all the sense,
Same
yeah.
thing with that next category below transportation is food services. That's down, if you're looking at the line by line budget, you'll see this, I don't know if you printed that, Becky, or not, or if you
Yeah.
just printed the report.
Yep, we
The
got it.
line by line, we still have a food service director. The 23,000 that we moved, we just moved to the school lunch revolving fund because that fund has adequate resources to help pay for that budget. Part of that has to do with COVID and how school lunch is now funded. We've been able to build up reserves so that we can afford to pay that portion of the food service director. Not all of the schools can do that. You know, Conway, for example, their school lunch program was in a deficit for years and we were having to supplement. So Frontier just happens to be in a position where it can make some of those choices. And that was a conversation had at the subcommittee level after seeing what the first round of assessments looked like. Sunderland in particular was almost at 11%. I know we're still talking about a high number at 9.5 or wherever it lands, but getting it under 10 felt like something that we as a committee and as a school could do to try to help support the town. Sunderland doesn't recoup the full $100,000, they only recoup their portion of the cost share, but it still helps to bring that total assessment down. Anything else before we look at assessments?
Let's have the hard conversation.
Yeah. So the bottom line is that we have very little new revenue growth. The new revenue growth in Chapter 70 is $35,000, and we're talking about growing our budget by $300,000. So that means that our towns are picking up, unless we have supplemental funds, our towns are picking up the full difference. There are several portions of the Chapter 70 formula. I am not an expert at Chapter 70, but what I can explain to you is that there's a couple different components. So Chapter 70 includes revenue that's paid directly to Frontier that help offset the budget, and then there's the required member town contribution. That is a portion of the assessment and of the formula that we cannot touch. If the state says the town can afford to pay more, then the town pays more. I can look at the enrollment numbers and make sure that those are accurate, make sure that the foundation budget looks okay, I can tell you that, Frontier has also been in declining enrollment, so we're not seeing huge growth there. And if one of our member towns has a significant shift in what they can afford to pay, it means that the other towns are going to pay more. For example, Conway, according to the state required contribution in the formula of Chapter 70, they cannot pay nearly as much as they have in prior years. So someone has to pick up that slack. So the other towns do based on their proportion of the formula calculation.
And because it also goes to wealth of the town and personal wealth in the town, if you're in Conway and you have 2 millionaires move out of town, that can adjust what the regional budget assessment is.
Yeah, I had a lot of questions.
That is what we believe happened.
So resident enrollment, they also had a decline in resident enrollment. Personal income of your taxpayers and the property values, and it's not based on your assessment of the property values, it's based on what the state says homes are worth. So bottom line is a lot of it is out of our control when it comes to that portion of the.
And what we don't know when we're developing the budget, and that's where these conversations are important, is we don't know if you got more revenue, right? Unless we go through in and out. I mean, we can probably go through your cherry sheets and go through, but we don't know all four towns if you had a good year in getting more money from the state. Is it money in, money out, or is it enrollment and the balance there? So that's where the communication, talking with us, what's going on.
Okay, so on page 11, top of page 11, it starts the second component of the Chapter 70 formula, determines the amount that each member town can pay. It's not necessarily a chart, but it shows you that member town contribution, and you can see in that data that Conway is down $225,000 according to what the state says that they can pay. Deerfield is up $78,000, Sunderland is up $92,000, and Whately is up $40,000 from the prior year. So we take other factors into consideration when building our budget for revenue, so transportation reimbursement, our own excess and deficiency, which the school committee does vote to apply $200,000 in excess and deficiency to the budget. We look at grant and revolving funds, which we've talked about a little bit, such as school choice, special education, all of those are taken into consideration. So the member town is based on, the member town assessment is based on our regional agreement. It's the state required contribution, plus any additional to fund the budget, plus capital assessment and debt service to come up with the total assessment. It's based on a 5-year rolling enrollment cost share percentage that is in the regional agreement. It just so happens that Sunderland dropped off a class that was really small and added a class that was really big in the 5-year rolling enrollment. So that shift was 18 students in the cost share percentage. It makes a big difference, especially when your other towns may be going down in enrollment.
Although we're relatively, we're the same as we were 21, so we're also pretty stable.
Yeah, 20 was 18
Yeah.
lower though,
Yeah.
and to 20 was 96 people, 96 students, and so we lost 96 students and we added on 114, which makes a pretty big swing for us.
Big swing. But it should stay relatively stable for the next few years. I don't think that, you have the upcoming class information with the sixth grade.
Huge cross.
Really? Okay. So there could be some swing in that again. Let's see. All right, so pages 14 and 15 outline what the assessment for each of the towns look like. Looking at Sunderland in particular, the state minimum requirement is up $92,000 compared to the prior year. The operating budget is up $112,000, and then transportation almost $18,000 for a total of $22,436, which is a 9.39% increase over FY25. There is no capital assessment, and there is no debt assessment for the new coming year. Any capital needs will be funded through existing school funds. So if we have additional school choice, if we have additional rural aid, we have a building use fund that has some significant availability of money. So We are looking at a couple of projects with the budget subcommittee, but the towns will not be assessed for those this year. And Frontier currently has no debt. Just as a reminder, we did pay off $930,000 in bond anticipation notes last year with school funds without having to assess the towns for the track project, HVAC, flooring, some other things that have been done over the last 5 years. The towns only ended up paying interest payments over 3 fiscal years, and Frontier paid off the bond in its entirety, so we have no debt currently. So the 9.39 would be the total assessment based on the budget that's being presented at the public hearing.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question about one of the formulas? It's a couple pages back, I'm not sure which page number
Yep.
this is, but the chapter 70 formula.
Yeah.
The columns 2 and 3 for Conway 86 and then 67, what is that telling me?
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's enrollment.
Down
They
19.
they went from
19.
86 to 67.
Number of students.
Number of students.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a huge swing.
So that's also based on,
So how does that track with the cost sharing table? That's
So
an
it's-
average?
So the cost sharing is based on a 5-year rolling average, so it'll have an effect on that, but it's not gonna be, it's not year to year.
So,
So-
so that's 63 versus 67, I don't know what that is.
so I can tell you that. The Chapter 70 formula takes into account certain percentages of student population for low income, for special needs, for out-of-district placements. So you might actually have 63 students in the school, and then they factor in those other components of the foundation budget, which we could have a whole nother conversation about sometime if you want to look at that. And then it adds some additional money to help fund your special
That's
needs.
where I was struggling with.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be.
It's a great question.
And so we think that Conway's number shifted that dramatically in 1 year, contra to all the other trajectories of the schools in terms of their ability. I mean, I guess the student count is ahead of that. So. Yeah. It's a big change.
And their income, personal income dropped, you said, dramatically.
That's what we had heard from
Your select board?
Select Board. Had said that they had some residents that were in a much higher tax bracket than out of town.
I mean, that's a big, I've gone to the Chapter 70 workshops. It's less about the students, it's more about the value of the homes and the income of the residents.
I know this is a little bit of a aside, but I'm really curious to see what happens with Leverett's assessment after the Kitteridge family no longer is a giant financial anchor in the top of that mountain. But yeah, one family, I mean, if Jeff Bezos moves into Sunderland tomorrow, we don't get any money left from the state. We, like, our formula goes entirely to the ground. And I know this is soapboxing, but it's a real concern when our ability to collect taxes is not dependent on somebody's income, but our ability to pay for school services apparently is. And I will need someone to explain that one to me at some point, because
Yeah, there's a big
it still doesn't make any sense to me.
So if somebody moves into the same house who makes much less money, it's still the same house, unless the house has been reassessed, still worth the
Yep.
same, so
So
taxes.
Jeff Bezos could be living in a,
No.
It's the value that,
I understand that, but if you assume that there's some relationship between real values and assessed values, at least it's
Not the income, it's the
commensurate, but they.
real estate, right?
But
So-
Chapter 70 does include the income.
No, I hear you,
Yeah.
what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
he's pointing out
I'm
there's
not
a
just-
disconnect there, because there's no mechanism for that to actually filter into the revenues
You
of
don't
the
do income
towns.
taxes
Right.
in Sunderland and
Right.
Deerfield.
if we could, that'd be a whole different thing, but that's a conversation for people with much more time than us. So it sounds like this is just a bad year for Sunderland. Nothing we can do about that. Not your guys' fault that more students decided to attend from Sunderland and some students decided not to attend from other towns. Really, nothing we can do about that. Is it going to be hard to absorb? Of course. But again, not your guys' fault. So, thank you for bringing us the budget.
And-
Sorry.
And just so you're aware, we're being hit on all fronts,
Yeah.
everywhere. I mean, it's not just the health insurance and the school and Sunderland Elementary. We had problem with our capital stabilization account. We've had some other issues. So this is going to be a very tough budget for us to meet. So if you think of anything, please call. Thank you.
Is there any other questions for Shelley or Darius while they're here? Thank you both for your time. We know how much work goes into this, and we really appreciate it. And we will talk to you all soon. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Alrighty. Franklin Tech, thank you so much for being patient. We appreciate it.
No problem. If you can log back in there, I think I can get on. So if you go back on there, I think I can work the magic to get on there. So it timed out after 40 minutes, but I think I can get on. There's a button I don't think we pressed yet.
You want me to say?
Go ahead and maximize this one.
Maximize.
We should be still, oh, I know this is, yeah, you can try to close this one out. And
All
then
10 of my students.
pull this up. Just go back to home. Try to start again. Great.
So that main screen pops up. Do you want to bring
Unless we'll get him in.
That's all right.
Don't worry about that. We don't have audio, something that will.
He doesn't need audio.
Okay, so we expanded. Now
Yeah.
it should have that little sidebar.
That's, I think that's
Click on
the Zoom.
participants.
Participants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna log in, so mine should pop up in a second, and once I open the link, see if I pop up here, and then someone's gonna have to let me in. I did it a minute ago, by the way.
Oh, shoot.
Um,
Where are you?
and not yet, it didn't pop up. It's waiting. I wonder if you go to, the video's off, I don't know if that makes a difference at the bottom left.
Yeah, our owl isn't working, our little
Okay.
eyeball here.
It shouldn't make a difference for the participants.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter for that.
Try it one more time here.
Should I be recording?
It already is.
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, it turned off at one point. Well, no, it didn't.
Yeah, no, it's definitely still recording. It's just recording nothing.
See, host,
I'm gonna log out and log one back in one more time.
It's from two regions, so it's actually not regional or SES, signal or school.
It might be.
Or not only that.
It didn't pop up this time.
I'm sorry.
just check host tools, it probably won't do anything. Host tools, let's see, enable, I don't think it's gonna matter, but enable, and you got waiting room,
Waiting room, yeah, get rid of that.
maybe unenable waiting room, I don't think it's gonna make a difference. But
Yeah, but waiting room should make people show up.
Yeah,
Yeah, they should show up, so it's just, I don't know, just figured we'd try it.
I don't think it's,
Do we have an HDMI cord? We can just toss them.
I mean, I got it, I've got the ability to hook up, I've got the cord. But they said before I came that they could hook me up to the big screen.
So we also have the whiteboard should be able to be connected to
yeah.
automatically.
Can you do it wirelessly?
Okay, we got Morgan here, he can help us out. All right.
I'm gonna just get the chairs, and just adjourn the finance.
But if you get an HTML code, then I'm all set.
Yeah,
It's like
I'm gonna
right
just-
now, I'll be up and running in 2 seconds.
So, can I have a second before you guys finish the technology?
Yes.
The finance committee would like to adjourn. It's part of this meeting because one of our finance committee members has to leave, so we will no longer have quorum. We will still two of us stay as citizens of Sunderland to ask questions if we have any, but our finance committee meeting has to adjourn. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?
So want me to look back there? I think there's an HTML
Thank you.
code.
I'm gonna, there's only the one that's on here, and I'm gonna just
Yep.
steal that one for now.
Okay, all right.
That's-
Or wherever.
Why I can.
Yep. We will.
I think that it needs a total overhaul anyway.
We'll be up and running in no time.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Here's HDMI.
That's great. Yeah, just plug it
Yeah, we
in
get
there,
nothing.
And then I'll plug it. Yeah, that will do it. I'll plug it in here.
This is not HDMI, this is the.
Right.
Yeah, because we just lost a member.
We'll now go back into session.
Okay, you got the HDMI cord right here?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not
Right.
HDMI.
We don't need it to be.
Yeah, I would
Just
just,
like if you got one of those
I
back
was just
here.
doing them, you're
we
right.
don't have anything from current, right?
Yeah, someone's gonna-
Anything on that TV?
This is the only cord that was on that one, unfortunately. Can we,
Well, that one, which is the first time we had that, could we get it up and running?
any
There's a
chance?
bunch of cords down in my
Well,
office.
if that other end hooks into that TV, then I can hook into the HDML.
Yeah, unfortunately, the end that we have hooks into the little computer back here.
Okay.
And this TV only has HDMI also. Let's see. Is it possible for you to email your presentation to
Yep,
Sorry.
Becky, and then Becky can share?
that should work, that's our only option.
I think that's where we're at.
How do I share?
So he's going to email you the presentation, and then I will.
Let me
I'll
just
get it set up
email
over
it to
here.
you real quick. All right.
So I still don't know why this didn't work.
I think I'm going to have to fiddle around with the owl at some point. But look at that.
So I,
I'll email you a PDF version of it.
perfect.
The last name is Dean, and the first name, maybe Ellie. No, it's not Ellie. And I never had a basketball, that's the last one.
Should be able to cast directly to the TV from your.
Okay, if I can get an email address?
Joe was actually.
Town,
Town admin.
to the left, there were a bunch of cords.
All right, I'm going to go figure out all that.
All right, we're working on it.
Yeah, my executive assistant called and indicated that you guys had the HTML code, so it might be that.
Well, I think I told her we would try to hook it up. I knew Nathaniel would try to do it, but I didn't
We
know
don't have an
how.
HDMI, no.
Well, we don't have the right end. We have one end, but not the other.
I have a dongle, I have a couple dongles in my thing.
I got the dongle right here, that's not the issue.
But it has,
The
oh,
issue
you
is
have
that
all,
we have both.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, you got the dongle in covered.
right, got that part covered.
Now, you emailed me?
Yeah,
Where'd it go? And my email's acting crazy.
I got town admin at townofsunderland.us,
You got it.
That's it.
so you should have it.
I don't see anything yet.
This is how big file? It's got a big PDF, right?
It's only a 2 meg,
2 megs, so not a big
so
deal.
it's not too big.
Come on.
Is there another email I can send it to?
No, this is the one we need. It's Outlook and it's been acting a little crazy. See,
I
5:40.
didn't walk, he's got an HTML code.
So yeah, I don't see.
Oh, he's got another cord?
I'm gonna see if
I got all kinds of dongles. I got one that fits that too.
this works. The other side's HDMI. Ooh, I think there's one of those.
Sounds somewhat optimistic.
Why don't I see your email now?
I don't know. I just checked mine and said it sent.
Here, come try this HDMI if you don't mind.
Yep.
I would look for a typo in the email.
Do what?
So I would look for a typo in the email, because sometimes you can make a typo, that if they made a typo in the email, it still shows sent, even though it doesn't really affect the send.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Hey!
we're there, all right.
Look at that. Magic.
Here's my computer, but this doesn't even look like it.
All right.
You just
Just
direct
take
time.
about 15 minutes and I'll be out of here and I'll take whatever questions you have. I'm Rick Martin, I'm the school superintendent for Franklin County Technical School. I've been at the school for 18 years. This is Jim Benoist. He's been on our school committee for as long as I've been at the school, if not longer. Right, about 18, 20 years? A long time. Yeah, he's a representation from the town of Sunderland, so he represents you. When we're at our school committee meetings, we have 24 members on our school committee for 19-member towns covering 560 square miles of territory. So what I wanted to show you is the budget book and how it impacts the town of Sunderland. So I'm going to start when you get this budget book, when it's voted on March 11th by our school committee, we'll send these right out to you. These are all going to be clickable. You can get to whatever you want within the budget. We start with the sources of funding here. And I'm going to start with the assessment to the towns. Let's get kind of right to it, right? So right now, you see, this is our assessment to the towns. We've been averaging about a 3% increase. And this year, it went to 5.5%. I'm going to show you the reason for that in just a minute. When you click the assessment to the towns in the chart right here, and we've been averaging at 3% for 10 years, and we went to 5.5. This will explain a paragraph of what's going on with the town, what's going on with the increase. SCTS is seeking a 5.5% assessment to the towns for the FY26 budget, due in large part to enrollment growth, increase in costs associated with vocational stock, such as steel, copper, wire, that kind of stuff. And a lot, I'm not going to read everything to it, but that's just some of the stuff. When you are navigating through this document, you go back to the sources of funding, you click it, it'll bring you right back to where we are. How we per pupil cost. Right here, you press the per pupil cost. I scroll down to the town of Sunderland right here, it's highlighted in yellow for you. And you see this is our enrollment trend. We had 6 students, 9 students, 9 students. 9 students is what our current assessment is, and that, you can see it's about $18,852 per pupil, which is kind of, actually it's lower than most of our member towns per pupil because our enrollment has a slight growth to it. Our average per pupil is $12,489. Again, as explained earlier in the last presentation, these numbers are set by the state to us. What are we looking at for the following year and how does it project out? Right now we have 2 seniors from the town of Sunderland. They'll graduate. We have 5 applications. So in theory, that 9 next year might move to 12. But we don't know who's going to actually show up yet. But that's, I just like to give you a year out idea of where we're going to be at. And when I look at that assessment to the towns and I go back to where we are on our town chart trends. I just gave you those. I'm going to just go down here to kind of talking a little bit about that assessment to the town piece when I was talking about the increase of 5.5%. This is a graph. When you see the orange line, that's the town minimum contribution. You can see how it's slowly going up and way up in these last few years. Chapter 70 was keeping pace with it. You see this dip here? Chapter 70 stopped keeping pace with the minimum contribution, now causing the towns to pay more and giving the schools less. That's what that basically says. And this has gone on since they changed governance. So you can look at the trend over the last couple of years. At the same breath, you can see the green line above net school spending. Now, we've been pretty low there for the most part. Now, if you're in Hold Harmless, there are school districts in the millions. Just in our Franklin County area, some 500,000, maybe at the lower end, but there's a Hold Harmless, so we're out of Hold Harmless. But if we look at what we're doing, our assessment to the town above net school spending, right now, if we were to not change a thing, and we were to just keep it at a 5.5%, we would be $179,000 above that red line. If we would go back to what we did previously, the last 10 years, and went to the 3%, we would only be $5,000 above the line. And why is that important? Because when we do trends, I do them in 10-year cycles. If we just go 3% even the year after, regardless of our enrollment, we'll drop below that red line to the extent of about $179,000. That means the towns, no matter what, required by law, have to pay anything below that line. So we're trying to avoid that from happening, which is why our assessment to the towns went from 3% to 5.5%, and I can accurately predict the following year we need to be at 6.5% to stay out of that red line. If we do nothing and maintain a 3% increase, we'll have a $400,000 hole the following year and $800,000 after that the towns required by law will have to pay. So we're trying to project that out. That's where we currently are, unless they change the Chapter 74 formula. I mean, the Chapter 70 formula, which we heard they might do. If they do that, this kind of goes away. But this is why they need to do something. Because if you're doing really good by your towns and only going with a 3% increase for 10 straight years, the state wants to take the money from it. So it's almost, they're not really rewarding us for being conservative in our estimates all these years. So I go back to the source of how we get our money. Debt service is $207,000 from our windows and doors project. We had a windows, doors paving project 9 years ago. We're in year 9 of the 15-year bond, so that's $207,000. That will change every 2 years based on the equalized valuation formula. And how does it affect the town of Sunderland? That's what we're here for. So I'm going to click on here, debt assessment to towns, scroll to Sunderland, and it's about $6,574 a year.
That's Shelburne.
One down.
Oh, one down, sorry, one down from there.
We'll take 6 million.
Yeah,
Six
sorry, you're
thousand.
$12,362.
Oh, darn.
I'm sorry about that. You're $12,000, and if you can see the different towns, what they have to pay is totally based on that equalized valuation formula that they dictate within the bond. If I go back to sources of funding, I look at Chapter 70. Here's what wasn't good for every school district. They somehow tweaked the formula of Chapter 70, and you can see here, we have gone up $500,000. $500,000. 30,000, and then this last one, 200,000. Even though our enrollment went up the previous year by 17, and this year by 19, we're still not getting that per pupil. It's crazy. This is the first time we've ever experienced this. Our business manager's been in the district for 24 years. He's never seen anything like it. So they've changed the formula. They're taking the money from those students who are increasing enrollment and giving it to the ones who don't increase enrollment. So they changed the formula completely, which negative impacts a school like us, as you can see. So the Chapter 70 formula is not good. Everything that you want to read about it and get explained, you can see that number 6198, right? You go to Chapter 70 cherry sheet. This is how you find your information for Frontier or whatever other school district you want to look up. This is a resource for you. You go down to the cherry sheet, you click it. It will bring you to an external Department of Revenue sheet right here. You take that Department of Revenue sheet, you go to all regional schools, you click down here, you can go to your school, but I'm gonna go to Franklin County Tech, and press submit, and that gives you the numbers we had in our budget. The 6198 is right there. Our regional transportation number only went up a little, even though we're the largest geographical school district in the entire state by far. Almost twice, we're more than twice as big as the one that's number 2 geographically, so our school buses have to go all over the place. So there's 882. So these numbers you're seeing here are reflected exactly in our budget, as you see here. So there's our regional transportation we just saw taken up. So we took some hits in Chapter 70 in regional transportation on that end of it. Our non-member towns have made up the difference. These are people who, you're paying $12,000, right? Approximately. You're paying 18, I think, 18,000. If you're a non-member town, you're starting at around 24, 25. If you don't have special education, you get special education, you're going up from there. So it's more expensive, and you're not guaranteed a slot as you are if you're a member town and you're a qualified student. So your non-member town, everything that's explained is right there in the paragraph. It will explain it for you. I'm not going to dive into all the guidelines, but you want to click external links and learn more about non-member towns. It's in the budget. And then I go down to state transportation. We just went over that. The tuition from our pre-employment program, that's one of our self-contained programs that take kids with high needs. We're going to pull about $50,000 out of that account because we had a few more students. We went from 8 to 12 students in that specialized type of program. Other revenues is our surplus equipment, and we happen to have a lot of that due to a vocational shop. We get different old equipment that goes out for surplus and what have you, so we take $25,000 out of that. Excess and deficiencies is the town's free cash. So like, you have free cash, we have what we call excess and deficiencies, the money that's unspent from the previous year's budget. That gets certified every year by the state. We don't have control over that. So what happens is $657,000. It looks like it's gone up a bit. Click on excess and deficiencies. It will have a whole paragraph explaining what it is. But if you want to know where we got the numbers from, which is important, because you want to have as much transparency, you can do this for your own school district as well. I go to Franklin County Tech, E&D certification. Same kind of a process we just went through. I select a jurisdiction. I go down to Franklin County Tech. I click on that. I go to the year 2025. I click on that. I look at preview. And in that record, you see down here is at 657,206. So that's that excess and deficiency. It's very important to be transparent when you're dealing with the taxpayers' money. Then we have, going back to how we receive our money, that kind of sums it up for a $16.1 million budget. How we spend our money, we're an HR industry. As said in the last report, 80% is spent on like salaries and teachers, and we're probably not much different. We look at district leadership and administration, went up contractually about $20-something thousand. The biggest increase is instructional services. When you see instructional services here, we had to add more teachers to meet the needs of the shop. We had 2 electrical instructors that went to 3. 2 carpentry instructors, because we build an outside house project every year, that went to 4. So we just keep adding, depending on the interest. So that's the driver there, and that's the biggest driver outside of what you already heard earlier from the increase in insurance is an accurate number that was provided earlier, 18 to 20%. When we look at that increase, you can see that right down in retirement, not retirement insurance, active employees, you'll see a $200,000 increase right there in that one shot. So what's helped and what does help up, again, is when we pull from that tuition revolving. One other thing you're going to see here is you see this capital stabilization number. The previous 2 years we were at 750. We came to you last year, explained that we had a Siemens $5 million project that had a bond of a 15-year life that expired just a few years ago. We knew that was going to happen. So we took that money that we paid in average of $500,000 a year, rolled it into the capital stabilization, so we didn't have to burden the towns with another 15 to 20-year bond to pay for the feasibility study as part of our MSBA project, which we are now involved in. We are currently in the design phase. At the time of this, the feasibility study is about $1.6 something million. And so that covers the cost without having a long-term bond out to our towns. And this year, we're down to $238,000, but that's just to keep the school running. We had main switchgear that went during the school year. If we didn't already have purchased an additional backup, about $100,000, we would have been out of school for a month or two, while Federal Pacific, which doesn't exist anymore, would have to build, we would have to have refurbished one built. So we had that done already, knowing that we have 11 of those switchgears about to go. As soon as we put that one in, another one went, but we already had the backup, so we put that in. At any time, we could be out of school a month or two. So we need some money in these type of pockets, not to mention our major plumbing issues that we had. You know, our school building looks great on the outside, but the reason why we were awarded to move forward with the MSBA, they came into our building and put us right to the top of the list. The thing was just falling apart. So it's a 50-year-old plus building, and that's what's gonna happen. So that pretty much balances our budget out. I'm gonna just show you enrollment, then I'll take whatever questions you have. So the budget book is pretty self-explanatory. Every line item that we spend money on, you're gonna be able, I mean, the other thing that's important is our grants. Everything we did with ESSA money, Perkins money, entitlement money is all in here for you to look how we spend our Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV money, Perkins money, our ESSA money, how we spent it. It was always spent on stuff we need, so we weren't in a bind. By the time they closed out the ESSA funds, we weren't in a hole because we didn't spend it on salaries to the extent that we were worried about that being, oh, gee, it's gonna end, now what do we do? Well, we knew it was gonna end, so we didn't go there. Any salaries we did spend it on, we could roll it into a grant that we already knew about. So, you know, we weren't in bad shape there. The other thing that we're able to do, you see, we have a new aviation program that just came online this year. And that's an aviation maintenance technician program. That's part of a competitive grant that we received. So it didn't come from the taxpayers in that respect. And that was 4.2 million or something around that. So we now have a 12,000 square foot hangar. We have 8 aircraft. We have kids involved in that particular program. And it's right on the boundary line between Franklin County Tech and the airport. So that program's just about to take off. I had to put that in. I couldn't help myself. We also, with our own funding, without going out to the towns, put a 4,800 square foot veterinary science building out there. Now, this is one of the towns that about 10 years ago was hit by a few students going to Smith that cost transportation-wise around $30,000 to $50,000 per student. Not to mention that out-of-district cost of $30,000 a student when they could just pay 18 and go to Franklin County Tech. So we put in a veterinary science program. We got a new state-of-the-art veterinary science clinic we're real excited about. And how do we get all that funding? Well, this is our competitive grant list since 2014. And we have brought in just over $9 million. That is, that's all competitive. This is a competitive, these aren't the entitlement grants. The entitlement grants anybody gets. So this is a little bit different. Each line item of our entire budget is exposed here for a 40 or 5-year trend. So you can see how every dollar is spent. Anything that's highlighted is just going to give you more explanation. So if you see school leadership building, you click that on, it will take you to that paragraph again. Give you a little bit more information, or any individual line item that's out of whack from the previous year. We wanted to point you to that, so we would highlight it in there. So there's our entire line item budget that you're going to have when you receive it. Not to mention, if you guys have insomnia and can't sleep at night, take this budget out, right? It's a great way to put yourself to sleep. So our enrollment trends are right here. This is how we can do our enrollment trends. We look at where everybody is in grades K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up. So I can accurately predict out where we're gonna be 3, 5, 10 years out. Where do I get those numbers from? You too can find the same numbers for your town in the DESC state reports enrollment. You just click that on, there's all your towns. In the entire state, there's kindergarten up top, all the way through, add them up, and you can find out who's in every single grade level. It's very easy to do. And that's how we kind of do some of our projections. So this budget book's a guide, not just for Franklin County Tech, but for you to look at your own schools and your own budgets. Our enrollment projections, here's what it looks like for the next 10 years, 8 years or so. We're right in the middle here. We're in that 2024-25. This blue line is all the available 8th graders in Franklin County, 617. Down here, the orange line is how many students enrolled out of those 8th graders, 180. For a catchment, about 29%. That's less students, percentage-wise, than we took back in 2015-16 when we only had 132. How's that possible? Well, we had 662 in the catchment area. Out of that 132, we had 150 apps. So 18 kids weren't qualified to get in. When we did the 180, we had 296 apps.
Jeez.
So you can see the difference is we are big believers if you build it, that the kids can get interested in, they will come, right? So there's our enrollment. Now here's what you can predict. Look at that catchment area enrollment. That was based on that other chart I just showed you. That drops down to 525 by the year 2033-34. So we'll be back down to about 165 if we take the same percentage of kids. That's how we can accurately predict where we would be. And that helps our staffing numbers as we project out. So we're not having those drastic cuts all in one year. If I see this coming down the pipe, we'll slowly refine our practices to get them to where they need to be. Our total enrollment rate now, we have 591. In members, we predict about 603 based on current applications and who's graduating. So that's a pretty accurate number. Like I did for the town of Sunderland, I was able to say, you're probably gonna get 12 next year. So you can get a pretty good idea. Our overall enrollment, including in-district and out-of-district, we're currently at 643 for grades 9 through 12, and we'll be at 658 in that vicinity for next year. Again, all the more reason why they are looking at getting us a new building project, because we had to get rid of our assembly hall. We no longer have it. We have that as 4 classrooms with the modular type of build-outs. We had a, we have divided up our shops to have our related class to fit the enrollment. So we're really busting at the seams as well. And that projection is not going to go down. I just showed you where we might be 8 or 10 years. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have. So that was a quick 18, 20 minutes. I thought I was 15, but that's all right.
That was great.
No, I mean,
No,
this is a ton of information. I really appreciate you putting it together. I look forward to pouring over the information down the line when we get it.
Yep.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and so then.
We'll get all this once you guys figure out the email and everything, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you'll get all of that as well, and so that's kind of the overall report. So, yes.
I just had a question about the potential MSBA project.
Yes.
I assume that would be a capital assessment to all the towns?
Yeah, the way it's gonna work is, we're in the design phase. They're gonna tell us, are we gonna have a renovation of the current facilities? They have to dictate that is that a safe and economically beneficial thing to do? Do we have a renovation plus an addition? Or do we just do a new core building? That's the process we're currently in. Once we figure out that process, they're gonna give us what that design is gonna be. By this time next year, I intend to come back and have a lot more information. If not, we potentially could even have a cost associated with that. But I think that would be a little early, but it's coming along pretty fast. So we would know a little bit more about that, but we'll definitely have an idea which track we're gonna be on in a year from now, what we're actually gonna be doing, and we might even have a cost that would be associated with that over the long-term part of the project. And that would be a district-wide vote, the same day, same hour, which would be like a 2 or 3 hour window, and then that it has to pass by a majority of the 19-member towns. So really, if 10 towns voted down and 8 towns voted through, it doesn't make a difference about the number of towns. It's just the total number of who votes. So if there are 4,000 people through those 19 towns who voted, all we would need is 2,001 votes. That's the way that would actually work. When we did our windows doors project 9 years ago, 9 out of the 15 years, we had 74%, with most of them in the 80s. So it depends on where we're at.
What's the typical split on the school project, on the capital project, between the state and the?
Well, for us, it might be around 65% would be reimbursed directly back to the towns.
Mhm.
And then, and the towns would have to pick up.
The third, 35.
Yeah, they pick up about the 35%, right. That's generally the way that would work.
So you've mentioned adding veterinary tech and that you're in the process of adding the aviation
Both I
program.
have.
Yeah. Current.
Yeah.
Do you have anything in the future? Or do you have any programs that you are looking to add down the line? Any growth in that respect in terms
Right
of?
now, the only thing we're looking to do is maybe refine our veterinary science, animal science project to include more of the larger animals and get that involved. So maybe a future bond down the road as part of maybe the MSBA project to expand upon that. So it'll be, more availability to students in this area, not to choose a subject within the agricultural field from another school district that will cost our towns 4 or 5 times as much. So we're trying to plan for that.
Okay.
And as far as
You're looking to
anything
get
else-
some cows.
Yeah, well, we have 4 beef cows, so we're already on our way.
Yeah, but no big gloves for counting.
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Grew up on a dairy farm.
Oh, okay, so you know your stuff, yeah.
Any other questions from the finance committee or?
No, this is great. Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
look forward to going through the document. The
Yeah.
links are super helpful.
And then when you go through the document, if you have any questions, I would love to have anyone just, call and you come over for a visit. And I will walk you through the budget and walk you through the school. Okay?
Great.
Okay, take care.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin.
Thanks, Jim. Good to see you.
Alrighty. So I believe our last budget presentation is the select board budget presentation. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Get my.
So funny.
You share that one.
I got it here somewhere. Yep, that's in there.
Thank you very much. Have a great one. Alrighty.
Is it the one that says accountant budget?
I think it's the TA or it's the
Select board.
select board
TA.
TA, SB and TA budget or TA expenses. FY 26 is the one. Alrighty. So it looks like
That's this one, right?
One page.
yep,
It's that way. No, that's not it.
it's got orange on the top and then green in the bottom. It's in the SharePoint in the
It's not in their
They don't
SharePoint.
get SharePoint. They don't
right.
get
You
it.
don't have SharePoint. Never mind. Sorry about that.
And I found out from my IT guys how to make you a SharePoint, but I haven't gotten to that. They're gonna have to do it, basically, but we'll get you, I promise next year it'll be SharePoint from beginning to end.
So it looks like moderator, select board, town administrator, select board assistant, for more resource admin salary, all of those are showing a $0,
0%.
0% increase. I think the caveat on that though is, that percentage can't be right because yours,
Well, with the 2.5 is what the personnel is recommending, but it's
Gotcha.
not official yet and select board hasn't adopted it yet.
gotcha, okay, so,
What do you mean it's not official?
I mean, till the select board adopts it, you present
Okay, but
it.
we voted it, the person.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
It-
You guys
it's
voted
your
it, but
recommendation,
we
and then we have
haven't
to-
adopted it yet, so,
I just wanted to make sure, I thought we voted, and I just wanted to
yeah,
make
yeah. No, I just meant it wasn't,
okay, so the numbers you have in here in blue are 2.5% above the other numbers pending that discussion, is that correct?
they are not increased.
They're not.
They are not. They are what they were. I have not increased.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was looking at the actual rather than the 25
Right.
request, I'm sorry, yeah, so no, they're the same all the way down, you're right, my bad. All right. So what's the,
That's the one I found.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I can't get this one to come up. Here
Yeah,
it is.
it's the,
Yeah.
that's all we
Yeah.
have.
Here it is. Thought I sent it in the last one, but I'll send it right now. Okay, so that's MTA.
It really jumps the audit.
So the problem, you'll,
The tech. And the phones.
it's the technology seemed to be unaccounted for in a lot of ways last year.
so it looks like the grant writing consultant line item and the professional development line item both are going down by about $3,500. Looks like the audit line item, it says here for year 23, the audit is due still. For some reason, it was not paid. So we're doubling up on that this year,
Yep.
27 instead of 13.5. And then there's an increase in the technology line item from 28 up to 38.8, so a $10,800 increase there. And that's what we were just saying is because our technology was kind of all over the place.
Right.
We had experience with that tonight.
Yep. If we added a 0 in there, it'll work next time. All right, and then there's a line in here about all department phone bills now being paid by mail. Oh, right, because we had a discussion about that previously where different departments, their phone bills were being paid out of different budgets, and so
We're pulling
Rolling
them
all
all
in one.
together, and Jeff told me there was gonna be a dramatic savings. I've reviewed the numbers with Mel, I'm not seeing a savings.
okay.
Is this going from 48? No, it's going from,
If in context of that, and I'm trying to remember a conversation from like a year ago, I believe the savings was not based on our previous year costs, but that the cost of the system that we had was going up dramatically, and that this new system is more than our old system had been, but is less than what the old system was going up to. If
That makes a
sense.
lot more sense.
So yes, it's still an increase, but it's not as much of an increase as what we were looking at
Potentially gonna
getting for the
get.
old system. Yeah.
Yes, that makes so much more sense.
And then everything else looks pretty straightforward down the line. Select board general expenses. Oh, that's everything. Yeah. Okay.
So since I don't have can you say what was the total percent increase?
So the total increase across the board is
12%, right?
yes, a 12% increase of a total of $33,835 for a 12% increase, with the asterisks of a lot of that is not, majority of that is not new money. The majority of that is money being moved from one department's line item to another department's line item. And the big caveat of that being the $13,500 additional for the audit. That's money that we should have paid in the previous year and didn't.
This is audit, technology, and telephone, basically.
Yeah. And the telephone is, again, that's something that we were already paying. We were just paying it out of other departments' line items. The audit is a 1-year thing because apparently we missed it 2 years ago.
It was supposed to be paid out of ARPA funds, but it wasn't.
Gotcha. And then the technology is just technology. It gets more expensive every year. I don't have any questions from my end. Dan, did you have any questions?
No.
Any questions from finance team? I know you guys aren't.
We're still waiting to get
Yeah,
the.
so we'll email you some questions or some
Okay.
questions that we have any, but
Okay.
I guess I just want to make sure that the savings for the phone, or the reallocation from the phone in here, we see going out wherever it was. Because I don't remember, I'm not sure which budgets, if we've already looked at them, I don't remember seeing anybody else saying, hey, we reduced ours because our phone thing got moved over. So I just want to make sure that that does happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. So yeah, we will make sure you get access to the information. And any questions, obviously, you can bring up, and we will have more finance committee meetings also, where if in a future one you have questions you want on the record, you're more than welcome to bring it up.
We know who to ask.
Exactly. Wonderful. All right, so I
So
don't.
just to check in with the schedule, we're meeting again, 2 week jointly on March 10th.
Assuming that's 2 weeks from today, then yes.
Okay.
Yep, that is correct. And that's actually something, we'll get that in a second. So no more questions about this particular budget from anyone? At least not right this second?
Well,
Okay.
And I will answer all your questions,
Yeah, no.
because they've
Yeah.
never had a chance to look at it.
Yes, no. We'll shelf that one for now. So that should be our last item of new business for today, unless I'm missing some. Oh, no, we need to discuss scheduling schools and other departments. So we had the schools come in today.
They like gangbusters, but unfortunately it cost us a finance committee member.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, is there any, not that I'm looking for problems, but if there's any official complaint, do we need to schedule them again?
I think there was no actual vote taken.
Yeah,
So
Select Board didn't vote, we did
the
vote.
purpose, I think the most important reason to move ahead was to get that information, because I don't think we could have gotten it from various availability. He really, and I didn't even have confirmation they could come until today.
yep.
I think
No,
they sent an email late on Friday.
purely informational stuff, we could have also pushed them off until public comment. And technically, they could have sat here and given us that entire spiel under public comment, and it really effectively wouldn't have been any different.
I mean, and the way that actually it was new business, it was budget request with Frontier Region. It actually doesn't say Frontier Regional, it doesn't say
Yeah.
SES, it doesn't say.
No, the only one that's completely not on there was tech. That one was,
Yeah.
yes,
It
admittedly,
wasn't
but
on
it was
there,
last
and
minute
they-
and,
And they originally had been scheduled there, but I hadn't heard from them until today.
Okay.
So,
So I guess the moral of the story is schedule everybody, put everything
And
on the
confirm
agenda, and then say they're not
everybody.
here.
Yeah.
yep,
So that's just something to,
yeah, whether they can make it or
that's
not.
kind of a good practice for the commission.
yep. Who else do we have,
But it could happen.
who else do we have to meet still?
I think with those three, the schools showing up, I think we're done.
Okay.
But we want to go back through and have discussions.
Yeah. I was just thinking about in terms of who we would have come in. It sounds like we don't need to have anyone else come in 2 weeks. We can just deliberate, so that's good. That brings up my next question, which is, what are we doing next Monday? Because Monday is the town caucus, and so that would be happening in this building at approximately the same time that we would be meeting here. This is not for you guys, this is for us.
Why would that schedule at the same time?
Hmm?
Why would they schedule that at the same time?
It's been Mondays the caucus has been Mondays for a long enough time.
It's often done in 15 minutes.
No, I know it's quick, I know it's
So-
fast.
So it might not be in the way of your,
What time does it
My
start?
understanding is, in the past, what we've done is we've just started the select board meeting when that's done.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
what time's the caucus at? Is it at 6?
Six.
Is it 6? I think if we say we could either say 6:30 still and roll the dice and probably be fine, or we could say 6:45 and give ourselves a little extra time. I think honestly, I think you're right that it's been like 15 minutes in most
when
years.
he runs it, it's like,
Yeah.
you ever been to one?
I would be comfortable. Let's keep 6:30.
I think people get
And worst
excited
case
about it.
scenario, we're a little late to start, but
Okay.
we're all in the room
Yeah,
already, so
everybody's ready and
we just start when
it
it's
can
done.
happen
I got,
because of technology.
Yep.
I got a question for,
Twice I've seen, it went longer, but of all the ones I've
It's a
been
big,
to.
when you do our deliberations in 2 weeks, we could put all these three on there, right? I mean, all the budget stuff that we talked about tonight will be available to talk about in 2 weeks, right?
Do we want to spend some time in 2 weeks talking about the revenue picture?
Yes,
Is
Yes.
that
yes.
what we would be doing? 'Cause I
And
think-
and we'll have all the budgets in.
So we'll have complete, on both
Yeah,
sides-ish.
Then we'll know what the big number in the middle is, because
Yeah.
there's gonna be a big number in the middle.
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, that's one of my questions, like, this is my first year doing this, but just looking at some of the drivers here, and not having seen the revenues, but just kind of wildly guessing at them, like, this doesn't look great.
Correct.
it's
does
not a great
this
year.
Certainly, like, does this seem like we're heading towards an override, or are we don't know yet?
I try to avoid using the override language
Yeah.
until we're sure we need one,
Right.
because it just gets everyone worried.
Sure.
That being said, there's a pretty big gap between, at least from my preliminary understanding, there's a pretty big gap between our revenue and our expenses this year.
I mean, all three of those schools came in higher than they have.
Ever.
Yeah.
Well, not ever, but.
But like tech.
Every time I turn
It sounds like we
yeah.
have to, otherwise they would pay even more, like I get that.
Every time I turn around, it's somebody else saying, "Oh yeah, another $200,000 this year, another $200,000 this year," and we have
Tech
about
budget was
we have
set
about
3%.
$200,000 to play with from Prop 2.5. I think 260,000 or something like that is our all-in number on it.
No, it's under 200.
It's under 200. Oh right, because
It's
yeah, no, because I'm thinking
for the-
total budget numbers, not our revenue numbers, because
Right.
there's so much other stuff that's not
Or
counted.
new, well,
Yeah.
when we get new growth, it does end up being like 250 with the new growth.
Yeah.
But-
We had, the other thing impacting the revenue is our valuations this year dropped by $4.5 million because of a appellate court housing issue with the apartment complexes. So, and that was gonna happen at some point in time, but it happened this year too. So that $4 million drop in valuations means the corresponding taxes.
That eats up a good chunk of our new growth, if not all of our new growth for the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it ate up the new growth.
Is there a way, Becky, that for when we come back in 2 weeks, you could gather some preliminary, ideas of how the other town administrators are seeing things come together? It would be helpful to know where Sunderland is different. Not that every town's going to be the same, every town has different drivers, and like that appellate court thing is obviously pretty unique, but,
Right.
It'd just be helpful to contextualize some of these shifts on either side. Obviously, like Frontier, we saw very disparate assessments due to the formula.
Yep.
Although
Maybe-
with Franklin Tech, we won on that side, right? Like we paid less per person than Deerfield and. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Right.
those scores, like,
And,
you know,
and
it's
I'm
a
not
little
looking
bit.
for that comparison at that level of detail. I mean
Right.
more like 30,000 foot, like revenue expenses, like how are other people starting to look at things? Or I don't know if the select board
I mean,
talks and you guys have.
Yeah, the short answer is that every town deals with a handful of problems.
Right.
And my understanding is, and I haven't talked too much to them, but my understanding is that other towns in the area are like, yeah, this one hit this year, but this one didn't hit this year.
Right.
And we're in a position where all of them hit this year. Like, pretty much pick a thing that could possibly go wrong this year budget-wise, and it happened. We're the only town with increased numbers for Frontier. Everyone else is down, going, Deerfield down like 35 people over the 5-year thing. Everyone else is down like 16, 18. We're up by 18 students. So, Conway's just paying $200,000 less this year than they paid last year. We're paying $250,000 more. And I know that this is probably just soapboxing, but there's also, when you look at the income of the 4 towns that go into Frontier, Sunderland is about $20,000 a year, $20,000 per capita less average income than our other towns, and that's largely driven by apartment complexes and whatnot. We're also the only town of these 4 towns that has sections of our town qualifying based on both ethnicity and on income for state
Environmental
classification
justice.
in terms of being low income or being minority driven areas. We are very much a different town than the other 3 towns are in that respect. And that's something that's never really talked about or brought up in terms of the different demographics. Those 3 towns have very, very similar demographics in terms of age, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of income and things like that. And if you take our homeowning population in Sunderland as a separate group, we look very much like that. But we have this giant population that's not part of that. And so, anyways, just again, I'm so bucking.
How much, do we have any wiggle room with not with the schools, but with like South County, Senior Center, ambulance, or are we stuck?
Well, EMS was the only department we've talked to that had a 17% reduction. I mean,
EMS was not a problem for us. South County Senior Center came in a
But
pretty
like-
substantial chunk.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm saying, again, it's compared to the school, but I'm like, how do we,
Deerfield has they have a they're like 50% of South County Senior Center.
And they approved it.
And they approved, and they're giving 5.5% COLAs. And step and COLAs to everyone in their towns.
Okay, well, that's, yeah.
And so that's driving EMS and the South County Senior Center.
Okay. I mean, the personnel committee, we're not at 5.5%, but we're at 2.5% plus steps, which gets to be more like 3.5% probably, yeah, on average, so it's not,
But it's only for a few people.
right, it's like 10 people.
Well, no, the steps, you're only getting steps that it ends up being like 3 people.
No, the $1 thing is only 3 people, but everybody got the steps. A, B, C, D.
Oh, okay.
There's the 75 cents, 58 cents, like
Oh,
there's 4.
okay,
Right.
okay. I have to review
But
it,
there's
sorry.
3 people that have a market adjustment, and then there's everybody who gets a step, and then everybody gets 2.5% COLA.
Okay.
So there's a step, you know what I mean? So I'm like, can I just tell me the whole percent? But I don't know, it isn't shown up yet. And I can look at that
No,
with you
I-
if you want to make sure that you,
I
the
did it
thing that you
all-
sent us, I saw that you sent it today.
Yeah, but I did not separate out, I did not give the 55
50s.
and the 70 to everybody. I didn't get that. So
Yeah.
I will change that and it'll cost more.
Yeah, the A, B, C, D categories
I
are,
brought the number down and it's gonna go back up because it's,
I just had one clarifying, I guess, question. I want to make sure, maybe I heard this wrong. I think on chapter 70, I heard Tech say that the formula is hurting schools that are having the enrollment increases and
Yeah.
directing the money to
He says
those
they were
that are
taking the
having decreases.
Yeah.
But the elementary school said that the formula is taking away the money from the schools that don't have increases and giving it to the ones that do have increases. Did
So-
I remember both of those?
I think both are actually true if you take the context that you want and leave the other context you don't want.
Okay.
Because the actual underlying formula, underlying chapter 7 formula, I believe has changed to minorly favor schools that have lowering enrollment, which is what Tech was talking about.
Yeah.
The other side of what Frontier was talking about is some Opportunities Act. There's some act that just got passed last year
Okay.
that gives more money specifically to schools that have increasing enrollment to help out for inner city Boston schools, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
And that's the money that the other schools talk. So they're both talking about this is going this way, this is going that way. And to be honest, they're both intentionally ignoring the other one to make their situation look worse to us.
Well, summary, as it always says, the money's going east.
Yes, almost
this
always.
is Massachusetts.
Yes, but unfortunately, so is the population for the state. The state in general has decreasing population. Massachusetts has lower population numbers year over year. But if you look at that by region, it's Western Mass is shrinking, and Eastern Mass is just like any urban center is just continuing to grow, and so it's hard to. And another thing that Mr. Martin was talking about is. That's fine and dandy when you have 1 million students in like 25 square miles in Boston, but if you have a school like Tech that covers, I don't remember how many
31 towns?
it's so, all the towns in Western Mass, the entirety of Franklin County,
Yeah.
it's a huge difference in transportation expenses and other regional expenses
So
like
is
that.
it the biggest district because Berkshire doesn't have its own tech school that covers the
Yes.
whole thing? I was gonna say, there's no way, because Berkshire County is a lot bigger.
Yeah, no, they don't have a single tech that covers their whole
Okay.
county, unfortunately.
That's fine. I was just
Yeah.
confused, I'm like, I've seen the counties, Worcester County's bigger, Berkshire County's bigger, Franklin County's big, I'll give you, but
Yep.
it's because we have a whole county. Right? It's just-
No, and we are really very lucky that we're a member town of Tech, because we paid 18,000 straight across the board, as opposed to starting at 23, but then special educational services and more. Just the students we have that are enrolled right now would be $100,000 more expensive if we weren't a member
Yeah.
town. So.
When do we see, the other thing that comes up is when do we see school choice money? Because that's not in the school budget. That's like how it is
It'll
the
be
town.
it'll be in our revenue budget.
Okay, so it's like net like, we sent this many people to Smith and this many people to PVPA or whatever, and then we got
So-
this many people.
Oh, no, I was only talking about the dollar amount.
So the
Choice money is not part of our budget.
yeah, that's entirely,
It goes straight to the schools. You'll see it on the revenue side.
You're talking about sending money.
But when we send money,
Like,
when we pay for
It
kids to
takes
go,
out the
That's
chairs.
different than school.
okay,
Yes.
it comes out of the church.
And-
Yeah,
and also-
it's on the recap, so you can save
Okay.
the money on the recaps. They take the money, they take whatever.
So that's already in these budgets.
yeah. And I don't want to say this is true for this year, but in years past, they've said that we as a district take more kids in than we send out, in general. Like, we have a school that has a really good special needs program, and we end up bringing in more dollars from that than we send out.
Yeah, I
So-
was just curious if there was gonna be another hit that wasn't part of it.
Oh,
No,
I don't
no.
think
In fact,
That's net.
largely, when you look at this, very few instructional assistants are paid for out of general budget funds. Most of the structural assistants are paid for out of school choice money or other revolving funds like that. So, yeah, a lot of that stuff is smokes and mirrors and 6 of one and half dozen other and all that kind of stuff.
So the health insurance
You can
issue
adjourn.
will hit harder at Frontier, because they're gonna stick it straight 20. And we might not be able to get, let's hope we can get negotiations done.
Yep. Alrighty, that's all of our new business today. Under old business, we have select board updates. I don't have anything, nothing from Dan. Wonderful. We'll keep that nice and short and sweet. Town administrator updates. Becky, anything that you haven't already covered?
No.
Wonderful. Even better. Nice and short and sweet. We've all been here long enough. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded. We have a motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-0. Thank you very much, Becky. Time is 8:38, and we can all go home and
Have dinner.